The thinking in the Israeli army is that they've only revealed so far perhaps half of the tunnels in the operation in Khan Yunis, which is where they believe that both the Hamas leadership and most of the remaining 130 odd hostages are situated. They think that they're still in another part of the tunnel network, and that's the main objective of the campaign there, to try and locate those tunnels, locate the hostages, and at some point eliminate the Hamas leadership.
Many of the Hamas terrorists who entered Israel on October the 7th came out of the tunnels under the city of Khan Yunis. And many of the Israeli hostages are believed to have been taken into the tunnels after the attacks. The Israeli Defence Force has taken the Times correspondent Anshel Pfeffer to see them, and we can speak to him now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What did you see that perhaps you didn't know about before?
Well, we've been hearing certainly throughout this war and already years before about the Hamas tunnel network, but really until you see one of these tunnels, and we've been seeing quite a few of them since the war began, but the one under Khan Yunis is really striking because it simply goes on, and you try to imagine people living and taking shelter and hostages being brought down into this very narrow parts. You have to walk in a crouch, and it just goes on for hundreds of meters under the city, going down about 30 meters. And right now, the tunnel, which has now been taken over by the Israeli army, has been cleaned of whatever was in it because they were looking for forensic evidence. They say they found blood stains, which they have connected to various hostages. And then you suddenly see a toilet cubicle or some other little room at the side, and you understand that this is how people were there for perhaps weeks on end, and it simply is something very, very striking underneath a city and underneath now a war zone. Just this long, dark tunnel.
Yeah. And Anshel, what are the kind of entry and exit points for the tunnels that you saw?
So the one we went into was basically hidden under the shaft that we went down was quite a deep shaft. You go down a long ladder and then 2 flights of stairs, which are kind of carved into the stone. It was hidden in a little sort of concrete cubicle, which probably was meant to look like a latrine or something else, an outdoor toilet or something like that. And I've seen quite a few of these shafts, and they're all sort of hidden in basements or in just like people's gardens and yards. And it's just, I mean, like I said, we've been hearing about this for years, but when you actually see this subterranean city under a city, it's very striking.
And many of the hostages are believed to have been taken into the tunnels after the attacks. Clearly, they're not there now. What is the thinking about the remaining hostages and where they might be?
Well, first of all, we know from the hostages who were released 5 weeks or so ago that they came back saying that many of them said that they were held in tunnels. The thinking in the Israeli army is that they've only revealed so far perhaps half of the tunnels in the operation in Khan Yunis, which is where they believe that both the Hamas leadership and most of the remaining 130 odd hostages are situated. They think that they're still in another part of the tunnel network, and that's the main objective of the campaign there, to try and locate those tunnels, locate the hostages, and at some point eliminate the Hamas leadership.
And in terms of the bigger picture, what has Benjamin Netanyahu been saying? What has his message changed at all? Has it intensified?
Well, his messages are all over the place. I mean, now his biggest worry is the hearing today at the International Court in The Hague, where South Africa and a number of other countries are accusing Israel of carrying out a genocide. So now his message is mainly in English, and it's aimed at an international audience, saying that Israel's not carrying out a genocide. Israel is only targeting Hamas. Israel's not trying to forcibly displace the Palestinians. Meanwhile, to the Israelis, his message has been, we will continue fighting, and this is a terrible enemy, and we will fight them till the end. And then there's the more discreet messages to the Americans, where he's talking about how Israel is going to sort of transition to a different stage of the war and start working on some kind of day after strategy. But Netanyahu's messages are really of a man who fears, I think with good reason, that his political career, his very long political career, is almost over because he's plummeted in the polls in Israel. He's about as popular in Israel as the Tories are now in the UK. And it's a very weird situation where a country is at war and there is still amongst Israelis a very high level of support for the war we're seeing in all the surveys, and at the same time a very low level for the leader who is supposed to be leading the country in war.